Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz. This is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Saturday, July 20th, 2024. And if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my daily rundown best bet, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Saturday, Major League Baseball. First up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the New York Yankees. Taj Bradley and Nestor Cortes are your starters. Interesting matchup here because we know Nestor Cortes has been a lot better at Yankee Stadium than he's been on the road this season. You look at the home and road splits, Cortes an ERA above 6 on the road, but sub 2 at Yankee Stadium. However, this is a really tough matchup because, first of all, it's the same Rays lineup that got to him before the All-Star break. Now, that was at Tropicana Field, but still, 4 1/3 innings, 7 base hits, 5 earned runs. And then you look at the fact that the Rays in the last 30 days and so far in the month of July have been crushing left-handed pitching. So this is another really tough matchup for Cortes. Now, Taj Bradley, he has been a lot better at Tropicana Field, has not been too sharp on the road. However, his last couple of road starts against the Rangers and Twins, solid lineups, both quality starts for Tampa Bay and for Bradley. So for me, I got to go with the Rays in this one. I just think that Cortes, even his numbers being better at Yankee Stadium, he hasn't looked the sharpest recently. The Rays have already proven they can get to him, and I think they get to him again. I'm going to go with the Rays on the money line in this one. Next up, the Detroit Tigers taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Reese Olson and Yusei Kikuchi are your starters. Now, we talked a lot about how Reese Olson's pitched really well this season, but hasn't always gotten the support, whether it's the offense, the run support, or the bullpen. But recently started to pick up some W's here for Detroit. And, right now the Tigers are 3-1 in his last 4 starts. He's had 4 straight games of 3 earned run baseball or fewer. And I think he pitches well enough here to grab a win for Detroit. Kikuchi, we saw him start this game strong against Arizona last time out and then get crushed in that 5th inning, giving up 7 earned runs as well. And, it's tough to have a lot of faith in his game. He's been rather inconsistent. Before that start where he gave the 7, he also had 13 strikeouts against San Francisco. So we've seen the good and the bad from Kikuchi recently. Detroit's been decent against left-handed pitching offensively in the month of July. I'm going to go with Detroit in this game. I also trust their bullpen more in this matchup. In our next game, we see the Oakland Athletics hosting the Los Angeles Angels. No official starter for LA, but we should see Mitch Spence going for Oakland. Mitch Spence has not been great in the last couple of starts before the All-Star break. He's given up a lot of sharp contact. 5 home runs his last 2 starts, at least 1 home run in 4 of his last 5. He's faced the Angels quite a bit recently. I do give the advantage to LA when you're facing the same lineup in a short span of time. I do think the advantage goes to the hitters. And while we don't have an official starter for LA, and I don't really love backing either of these teams right now, I would lean towards the Angels on the money line right now. I think their offense gets suspense, and I think they grab the win on the road. Next up, we see the New York Mets taking on the Miami Marlins. Jose Quintana and Roddery Munoz are your starters. We've talked about how Munoz has given up a lot of home runs this season, a lot of sharp contact. He's amongst the leaders in terms of giving up the most home runs as a starting pitcher this year, despite only having 51 innings of work, which is about half as many innings as most of the starting pitchers on that list. But, it's promising to see in the last 2 starts, Munoz, no home runs given up to either the White Sox or the Astros in 10 2/3 combined. And when you look on the other side, Jose Quintana, for me, when you look at this price and you look at how Quintana's pitched this season, yes, an ERA of 4.13, it's pretty solid on paper for a starter like Quintana, but the expected numbers are not great, some of the worst in all of baseball. You look at the fact that he gave 5 earned runs and 4 home runs in his last start before the All-Star break against the Rockies. That wasn't at Coors Field. That was at Citi Field, a more pitcher-friendly ballpark, against one of the weaker lineups in baseball. You give up those 5 runs, you lose that game as a big-time favorite, 8-5. For me, when you look at the Marlins bullpen, the improvements it's made so far in July, the 3.0 ERA and the second best xFIP, I got to roll with the Marlins in this spot. I think it's a favorable matchup on the money line, especially at this price. Next up, we see the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Christopher Sanchez and Luis Ortiz are your starters. Luis Ortiz, we said it last week, he's been quietly putting together a really strong season, a 2.84 ERA in 66 2/3 innings. Most of that work has been out of the bullpen, but his last 2 games were starts against the Mets and White Sox. Obviously, the White Sox not a great lineup, but the Mets were playing pretty good ball going into that series. He went 6 innings of shutout ball against New York, 5 2/3 of 1-run ball against Chicago. He's in good form. The Phillies are a really tough matchup, one of the toughest matchups he's going to have this season, but I think he puts together a decent outing On the other side, Christopher Sanchez has not been great on the road this season with an ERA of 5.54. However, I do think this matchup benefits him quite a bit. You're facing a Pirates team that he already faced at the beginning of the season on April 12th, went 6 innings of 1 earned run baseball. A quality start in that one, and he had a great 14-3 ground ball to fly ball ratio. Sanchez is considered a ground ball starting pitcher. His ground ball percentage right around 60% on the year, and that bodes well against the Pirates because they have I believe, the third highest ground ball rate of any offense in baseball. So if Sanchez continues to keep the ball on the ground, limit the sharp contact, even though it's a road start, I think he pitches well. I'm going to go with the under in Philadelphia-Pittsburgh. Next up, we see the Cincinnati Reds taking on the Washington Nationals. Pair of lefties on the mound in this one. We're going to see Mackenzie Gore and Nick Lodolo. Now, neither of these starting pitchers are in great form right now, but I think the key with Lodolo is the fact that a lot of his starts recently were at Great American Ballpark. In fact, his 4 of his last 5 and his last 3 all home games. And we've mentioned we don't really love backing Lodolo when he's pitching at home. On the road, it's a different story. He's 4-1 with a 2.27 ERA, well above a strikeout per inning. Limits sharp contact. The control's been much better. So for me, I think this is a good spot for a bounce-back start for Lodolo. And the Nationals have not been anything special against left-handed pitching. The Reds have the better numbers recently against lefties. Gore, that last game against the Mets, he was pitching well. He ran to a really tough inning and couldn't get out of the jam. Gave up, I think, a bases-clearing double or triple, and ended up with the final line of 4 2/3, 4 earned runs, 3 walks, and it was just an ugly start in a 7-0 Nationals loss. And now the Nationals are 1-4 in his last 5 games. I got to roll the Cincinnati Reds in this game on the money line. I trust Lodolo more, and I think that the Reds lineup right now is also the better lineup against the lefty. Next up, we see the Baltimore Orioles taking on the Texas Rangers. Grayson Rodriguez and Max Scherzer are your projected starters. Gray Rod has struggled against these Rangers in his young career. Obviously last season, in the regular season, he had that one really bad outing. Then in the postseason, he got shelled and only about an inning and 2/3. And, we saw Gray Rod to end the first half, give up those 3 home runs against the Yankees, 6 earned runs in a 6-1 Orioles loss. I still think Rodriguez is one of the better young pitchers in the American League, but going up against the Rangers team, I think has been a lot more competitive recently. Max Scherzer's found his game. He's starting to miss more bats. Limit sharp contact. His control's been really sharp. It's tough to go against the Rangers in this spot. And then you look at the bullpens. The Orioles, we know they had that pretty rough stretch to end the first half of the season, and a lot of that was because of the bullpen. The ERA went up there. The expected numbers have not been great so far in July. I trust the Rangers bullpen more right now. It's crazy to think because we know Texas has had some issues with their bullpen in recent years, but for me, I like the Rangers in this spot on the money line at Globe Life Field. Next up, we see the Chicago White Sox taking on the Kansas City Royals. We're going to see Jonathan Cannon and Brady Singer as your starters. For me, Brady Singer, his last start before the All-Star break was not his best. 2 2/3, 4 earned runs, 8 base hits. That was at Fenway Park, and really he had a couple of tough outings, tough spots at Coors Field, at Fenway to end the first half. For me, now back at Kauffman Stadium where we know he pitches better baseball, sub-3 ERA, great strikeout numbers. I think Singer puts together a quality start here. I think it's enough for a Royals win and run line cover. Cannon's been solid, but not so much on the road. A 6.62 ERA away from home. I think the Royals get to him and this White Sox bullpen. Give me KC on the run line. Next up, we see the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Minnesota Twins. No official starter for Milwaukee, but Pablo Lopez should be going for the Twins. Lopez got to be considered one of the more disappointing starting pitchers in the first half of the season. ERA above 5. He's an ace-level starter on paper, so you expect a lot more from him. But I do think we see a much better second half. The expected numbers overall for Lopez this season are still strong. I think he bounces back in the second half of the season, puts together a good outing in this one. Now, the Brewers are a tough matchup. They've hit righties well, but so have the Twins. The Twins' offense has been very strong recently against both righties and lefties. And then you look at the bullpens. I mean, Milwaukee is 8th worst in xFIP in the month of July. The Twins top 5. So I think the Twins have a big bullpen advantage. I think they're going to have the starting pitching advantage. There's no official starter right now for the Brewers, like we said, but I still think Lopez, I wouldn't give up on him. I think he has a strong second half of the season. I think the Twins grab a win. And like I've mentioned many times, I like this Twins team here in the second half of the year. I think that they find a way to win the AL Central. So if you want to put a futures play in, to me, Twins AL Central is something I'm looking at. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the Cleveland Guardians. Dylan Cease and Gavin Williams are your starters. Dylan Cease had the exact outing he really needed to have to end that first half of the season. We know Cease had a great start to the year. Then he started to struggle, gave up quite a few earned runs, home runs. The walks were piling up. He wasn't pitching deep into ball games, but to end the first half, he faced the Braves. He went 6 innings of 11 strikeouts, shutout baseball, and the pitch count went up on him pretty early in that game, but he was able to be a lot more efficient as the outing went on, and like I said, put together that quality start. For me, it's tough to go against Cease in this matchup. I know Gavin Williams has been solid, but I don't love the fact that Williams, less than a strikeout per inning by quite a bit, only 9 Ks and 14 and a third in his first 3 starts. To me, there are regression concerns for his game. This is a tough Padres lineup and a solid Padres bullpen. Give me San Diego in this one on the money line. Next up, we see the Arizona Diamondbacks taking on the Chicago Cubs. Zach Gallen and Kyle Hendricks are your starters. Zach Gallen, I think, eventually is going to get back to form, be that ace-level starting pitcher in the Diamondbacks rotation. But, in the month of July, it's not been great for him. 13 innings, 13 earned runs, 15 total runs. So 9.0 ERA, 20 base hits, less than a strikeout per inning. And, you could say the first couple of games, the Dodgers and Braves, those are tough matchups, tough teams, 2 of the better teams in the National League. But that last start against the Blue Jays, which was his worst start of the 3, Toronto's been one of the worst offenses in all of baseball this year. So really no excuse to give up 9 base hits, 7 total runs, and only 1 strikeout in those 3 2/3. For me, Kyle Hendricks, we know he had a miserable start to the season. The ERA still represents that at 6.78, but he's been a much better pitcher, much different pitcher since those early season struggles, and he even ended the first half of the season against a tough St. Louis lineup on the road, going 7 innings of shutout baseball and a 5-1 Cubs win. I think Chicago overall has been a lot more competitive in the month of July than they were, say, towards the end or really the entire month of June. I'm going to go with the Cubs in this game. I think Hendricks right now in better form, and I'm going to go with the Cubs on the money line. Next up, we see the Boston Red Sox taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Brian Bayo and Justin Robleski are your starters. I think this matchup benefits the Dodgers quite a bit, even though Bayo's been better on the road. Robleski, a lefty, facing a Red Sox team that's not been great against lefties this year, and in the last month in particular, 28th in WRC+, with a 31.1% strikeout rate. The Red Sox, for some reason, have really had a high K rate against lefties in 2024. It's been, right around 30% basically all season. So I think it's a good spot for Robleski to put together his best start at the major league level thus far. Bayo, while he's been better on the road, we saw his last game was a quality start against KC, but he still gave up 7 base hits, 2 home runs. He's given up 8 earned runs last 2 starts combined. I think the Dodgers get to him. I think the Dodgers win this game on the money line, and I potentially lay 1.5 runs as well. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Atlanta Braves. We see Kyle Gibson and Charlie Morton as your starters. This has got to be one of the tougher games for the Saturday card, in my opinion, because I honestly think, especially in this matchup, in this starting pitching matchup, these are 2 very similar teams. You got 2 veteran starting pitchers that have been rather inconsistent this year. We've seen some really good outings. We've seen some not so good. Charlie Morton has been better at home this year. Gibson's been a pretty profitable starting pitcher recently. So, you can make the argument for either guy. For me, I think when you look at Gibson's struggles on June 29th or June 26th against these Braves, 4 innings, 4 earned runs, 5 walks. It's tough to get there with St. Louis. Charlie Morton didn't face the Cardinals in that series, so I do think he has the advantage there. Then you look at the fact that I think both these bullpens, long-term wise, are solid options, but when you look at St. Louis's pen in the last month, it hasn't been as strong. You could make the argument that the Braves have the best lineup in baseball recently, a very low ERA, and the best xFIP as well. So then you look at the lineups, they both kind of underperformed. They have a lot of talent on paper and some nice young hitters, but they're also underperforming recently. The Braves' numbers against righties, they're not great in terms of WRC plus or team OPS. I think St. Louis may have the slight advantage there, but I'm going to go with the Braves here on the money line at home. I think it's going to be a close one and kind of a 50-50 game, but I'll lean towards Atlanta. Next up, we see the San Francisco Giants taking on the Colorado Rockies. No official starter for the Giants, but Kyle Freeland should be going for the Rockies. And since returning from injury, Freeland's been a totally different pitcher. We saw him struggle miserably at the beginning of the season. The first start of the year against Arizona, one of the worst starts for any starting pitcher this year. But since the injury, his first 4 starts back, all quality starts, 2 earned runs or fewer in all those games. 3 of those were victories for the Rockies. We know the Rockies have been, one of the worst records in baseball this year. So for Freeland the Rockies to be 3-1 in Freeland's first 4 starts back, including 2 road victories, which we don't see too often for the Rockies. Pretty impressive stuff. We saw 9 strikeouts in that last game against Cincinnati. That's a decent Reds lineup. And you look at San Francisco, they've been solid against lefties overall this year offensively, but in the last month, a 28.4% strikeout rate is through the roof. And they're also below league average in WRC plus and team OPS. So For me, I think Freeland pitches well, keeps his team in the game. I think the Rockies, we'll have to see who the Giants starter is, and if it's more of a bullpen game. I do think San Francisco is a solid bullpen, but I got to go with the Rockies in this one on the money line. And in our final game for the Saturday card in Major League Baseball, it's the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners. Framber Valdez and George Kirby are your starting pitchers. Framber's had some trouble with this Mariners lineup in recent years, and so far this season, we saw last year on August 19th, he gave up 10 base hits, 6 earned runs, and a blowout loss to Seattle. And so far this year, like we mentioned, a combined 11 and a third innings, 15 base hits, 8 earned runs, 2 home runs, 4 walks, and only 7 strikeouts, and both of those were Mariners wins, 5-0 and 3-2. When you got the Mariners hitting lefties a lot better, much, much better than they are hitting against righties. I mean, they're dead last right now against right-handed pitching in team OPS, but against lefties, they're above league average. Then you add into the fact George Kirby has been really solid at T-Mobile Park this year. He's in good form. He had a good end to the first half of the season after some shaky starts thrown in there. But, his last 5 games, 3 earned runs or fewer in all 5 starts. All those were 6 innings or more, so all those were quality starts. Starting to rack up the strikeouts again as well. Now, Kirby's not been able to get run support recently. 2-1 loss, 2-0 loss, 3-2 loss. However, I think he gets the run support a lot more in this game. I think the Mariners bullpen holds the lead. Give me Seattle in this one on the money line. And that's it. Those are the games for Saturday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe and put those baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Romanelli. Good luck.